Cool, man. Well, we're first, welcome to Off the Record podcast. We're live.
I love the name.
Why do you love the name?
Oh well, just the irony behind off the record. And here we are recording.
Yeah, dude. Well, one, I want to thank you for agreeing to this. Just for the viewers' sake, I've known you for, man, how long have I known you? I think 7 years,
7 years, 8 years, yeah.
7, 8 years. That's a pretty long time. Um, I I want to let the viewers know just a little bit about you real quick. I've known Selah for about that time. You've worked with what couple of nonprofits that I've known and affiliated with. You and your wife run a pretty successful company in San Diego, California. You have a pretty cool resume, man. And I've always admired who you are. And I just thought that it'd be kind of cool to bring you on this podcast where we are talking about people who make impact off the record.
Yeah.
And so I interviewed a couple of people, man. And you were, when we started, you were the first person that came to mind. Me and my friend Adam Graham. And I was telling him about you and kind of just telling him, like, dude, we have to have Selah Binno. You don't know him yet, but you will, on the podcast. And so just if I don't know if you want to share a little bit about yourself, kind of share like how you're adjusting to quarantine, how you
Yeah.
and your wife are doing, how Tanya's doing.
We're pretty like fortunate, blessed because the company that keeps us the most busy is considered an essential service.
Oh, nice.
And so we haven't had a crazy change with this whole quarantine thing. I mean, obviously, like everybody else, we can't do a lot of the things we used to do. We ate out a lot. We like to get together with friends.
Yeah.
So stuff like that has certainly changed. But like business wise, keeps going. We're not like bored sitting at home twiddling our thumbs. But we are like everybody else trying to figure out what do you do right now? Like, can you
Yeah.
hiking? Like, where do you go? So
Yeah.
it's been kind of interesting, but not too crazy of a change.
Not too crazy. Um, I asked this question earlier to someone, and I said that the only thing that's really consistent is change. I'm on, how do you navigate uncertainty? And that was kind of my question this morning, and I kind of want to propose that question to you. How do you feel that we, as humans, maybe you as Salah first, how do you navigate uncertainty? Do you navigate it, or do you kind of just roll with the punches?
I think I've noticed like two main approaches that I've taken, and I'm sure most people take.
Yeah.
I think maybe whether it's intentional or unintentional is the question. Do you actually know you're doing this or
Mm,
not? And I don't even think this is like, oh, I always navigate uncertainty in this way, or I always do it that way. I think it's probably a mix of both. But the two ways are either a you in whatever context of life you're talking about, whether this is how I treat my business, this is how I treat my relationships, whatever context you're talking about. I think people either say, um, as things come to me, I'm going to respond to them and try and, see the opportunity in them and do something with it. But I'm going to kind of wait till they come and then I'm going to build off of whatever happens.
hmm,
Or people try and create certainty. And they're like, okay, so I'm going to make plans and I'm going to make goals and I'm going to create
yeah.
timelines. And then I'm going to take intentional action towards them because I want certainty. So I
Yeah.
think you do one of the two. So either in uncertain times, you're probably right
Mm,
now, and maybe you're doing both, like I said, depending on the area of life you're talking about. You're probably either planning right now and thinking about the future and trying to take intentional action, or you're like, hey, we're going to see what happens with this, and then I'll respond. We'll see what happens with this, and I respond.
yeah.
I think we're doing a little bit of both. I think we're doing a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think that's for a lot of people. Like this morning I told my friend, I'm like, people are getting that quarantine 15. There's a freshman 15, you gain 15 pounds when you go freshman year because you just didn't expect, all the pressure. But then there's the quarantine 15 where, uncertainty when, you don't roll with the punches, it feels like
Yeah,
there's that extra
yeah.
gain and weight that you didn't anticipate. I guess that's a cool. I
Right,
don't know if
right.
that's a metaphor or like analogy. I'm not sure, but it's a cool comparison.
Yeah,
Well, this podcast is about impact, and I know that you have studied that word pretty a little while ago. We've talked
guilty.
about that word.
Yeah,
I think that I believe that you value impact and you value using that word appropriately. And so I think people use that word pretty lightly, where and they use this kind of phrase like "I made a difference" or "I made a change" or "I'm doing good. I'm doing good for society." And so, if you can give us a little insight on impact, what have you seen? What does impact mean to you? Maybe that's a better question.
Well, when I started thinking about it, for us, it needed to mean something because we were going to measure what we were doing and what we were spending and how we were spending our time, energy, and money on. We were going to measure it off that. So I had to create
Yeah.
some definition that I could measure against. So a year or two ago, I decided that the definition for me of impact would be what remains after we push against or press
Mm,
into something. So whether it's some force that we're pushing against, whether it's some thing that we're going to press into, and really it would be, impact would be defined by what remained. And that helped us separate out things that maybe we did in the moment, almost like one of those like foam things where you can like push into it, but when you let go it kind of returns to its original shape.
yeah.
So it kind of helped us figure out like, oh, this is like, if we want to create impact, it's got to be something where after we're done, there's the impression is still there. And that's what we did for us, is that's how we defined impact for us.
And so you said push or pull, and that's like kind of like the analogy you're talking about, like whatever. So whatever remains, can you like apply that maybe to, I don't know, maybe someone's personal life? Could that be applied to someone's personal life, not just in um a business model, but in, you know, trying to make impact in your own personal life? How can you measure push or pull?
Um, so push or press, push against or press into. Um, but I think a common one that just makes it easy maybe is like the whole gym thing.
Mm,
Gyms are packed, January
yeah.
1st through the 30th, maybe into February. But I don't know if you get into October, November, and you say, okay, I really pressed into that thing, or I really pushed against weight gain and my
Mm,
issues with, or even weight loss. Like I'm really thin. I need to come get a little more healthier. I wonder if in November, if you look back and you say something remains from that, or if it was
mm,
like, no, I just kind of pushed into the foam and then I let go. Nothing really changed.
yeah.
With habits, like, oh, I did this I did this for 3 months, and a couple years later, like, is it still part of your routine or rhythm, or
Mm,
was it something you did, if you pushed into it, the foam had some compression and you could see the
yeah.
impact in the foam, but you let off of it. Um, so in your personal life, yeah, I kind of wonder, even now during this quarantine time, these things that you do now, right now in the quarantine, the things that you're like, oh yeah, I started doing this, I started reading,
Mm,
and now every morning this is my routine. We'll see, I guess, whether
yeah.
anything remains from it. And let me just clarify: not necessarily are you still doing it later. That's not always the measurement of impact, whether you're still doing it. But in 2 or 3 months, like, did something remain from this time, or was it
Mm.
just that's what I did in that time, and the effects were in and out?
I like that because it changes impact from doing a good deed, you know, to making like a long lasting and actual impact where like
Yes.
you have to measure the time in order to see if there was an actual impact. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, after this quarantine's over, I guess we're really going to see what impacts remain from being isolated for so long, right?
I think so.
You
Yeah,
think
I think
so?
so.
What do you
Yeah.
anticipate? Like, what do you anticipate for the average person? Like there has to be, if someone wants to make impact now, I mean, however they want to make impact, how does someone go along in doing so? If that, and maybe that's a general question, but like, how do they begin to make, how do they make impact in themselves and make themselves better going through this quarantine? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Generally, it's a big
Yeah.
question, right? Like, what
Hmm.
what are what are you trying to do? I guess using that whole are we pursuing the opportunities that come to us, or are we kind of defining the opportunity and then pushing towards it? If I use that, I've heard some people, maybe it was even you and I who were talking, and it was like, I'm really, you said I'm kind of finding certain things about myself that I didn't realize before. And people
Yeah.
are talking about like, wow, I'm starting to do this now, and I'm starting to realize this about me. I wonder if the good things, so those are the things that are kind of opportunities that are presenting themselves to us.
Yeah.
I wonder if people are going to say, wow, I really love that this gave me the opportunity to run more or whatever. I
Mm,
wonder if they're going to like continue that, or if they're going to just back out once life gets busy again and you got to be at school and you got to be at work and you,
Yeah.
I wonder if people are going to be able to maintain this stuff. So I
Yeah.
wonder if we're forming our new life around these things, or if this is just like a placeholder.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And
not answering your question, but I'm kind of wondering with you, actually. I think we're
yeah.
both wondering the same thing.
Yeah. I'm asking the same question for myself. Like, I think I picked up like 3 or 4 habits that I'm like, man, I hope I can continue this, and when I'm going back to work full time and when I'm in school full time.
Can
Um,
you, Johnny? Like, is it possible, or what do you think?
yeah, I was seeing that running meme that someone was posting saying, you know, uh, you've complained about time for 4 years and now you have all the time in the world. So
Yeah.
whatever it is that was on your bucket list, if you don't do it, it's because you're lazy, basically. And then I saw a counter meme that basically said, focus on health. Like, screw this meme going around. Like, who cares about that? Like, basically, like, if you're healthy, focus on your mind. So there was like two sides, like, and you're kind of stuck in the middle. And so I was like, well, I want to pursue these things, but I don't want to create and do something based on this extra time that I have. I want it to become just part of what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
And so
think a lot of people are. I wonder if they're going to be able to.
I saw another meme that said, all these podcast mics are sold out because so many people are trying to do podcasts now. Like, what else do you do? And so I even posted for the first post on the page, I posted, I'm like, I'm pretty sure everybody and their mom just started a podcast, but hopefully you listen in. And so we'll see. Let's see who listens in. Um, Dude, so I mean, is there anything that you started doing outside of quarantine that you feel isn't your regular norm? I mean, you said that you've kind of been still the kind of guys the same routines because you guys are still working. But have you started anything that you usually don't do?
Well, in short, the last 6 months have been extremely challenging for us. We had just a lot going across, a lot happening across a couple different areas of life. And so we knew that. We projected it back in October that we were going to have a crazy 6 months. So it's not only did the quarantine thing happen, but what we naturally thought would happen with just kind of a calming down of the busyness happened at the same time. So the first thing we did is I've just been like, this is the first time in 5 or 6 months, if I can just be honest, that my email is like clear. I feel caught up. I
Wow.
feel organized. My desk isn't too much of a mess, which is unusual for me. So I think the first thing I did was just took advantage of the opportunity to finally get back to what I wanted my norms to be, which wasn't so much craziness.
Yeah.
But I think like a lot of people, I don't know if this is the same for you. I've been doing a lot of reflecting,
Hmm.
and maybe it's because I'm getting old too. I don't know. They say age makes you reflect more, but I am starting to look across some of the things a little bit more and say, do I want to keep doing this when everything returns to normal? Do I
Hmm.
want to keep doing this? So I think right now, what I've been doing differently is not just going. I've been wondering, what should I start dropping?
Hmm.
And that's a really hard question for people to answer. What do I stop doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
People, it's nice to talk about. It's actually really hard to do. But it does begin
Hmm.
with an internal conversation. So I think what's happening differently is I'm not just going with the flow. I'm actually starting to kind of push back on the flow.
I like that. I mean, I feel that I guess any motivational video out there or inspirational video will advocate for you to do something more, and that's almost like the capitalistic society we live in, where it's like more, or get more, do more, wake up at 4 a.m., like in all
Yeah.
these routines that it feels like you can't even adapt to.
Yeah.
But going back to your point, I read a book a while ago recommended by Tanya, actually,
Okay.
Essentialism.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I forgot the author, but it wasn't about doing more. It was about only doing what's essential.
Yeah.
And so cutting out all these extra things that actually don't benefit you at all. And that's a hard question to do, like a hard question to actually act upon. And so I kind of want to change this to like a business perspective and say, like, I feel like all these businesses during this time, one, they're in desperate need of aid to continue to survive.
Yeah.
And two, they're trying to be like, well, how can I help the community? And so they're thinking about, maybe this is an opportunity to help the community. But three, if we choose to do so, is this something that we can sustain outside of quarantine?
Mhm.
You know, is this an impact that we can continue to make outside of just this specific circumstance, or do we just capitalize on this circumstance?
Oh, yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
so I want to, man, I want to challenge business owners. And although I feel complete sympathy for business owners, local business owners that, you know, can't are struggling to survive right now. I know one, a good friend of mine, Justin from Gentile,
Oh, yeah.
and you know, they're an amazing coffee shop, you know, and they're really reliant on their you know, on their regulars to come in now to get coffee. And so for those business out there, what do you recommend to continue to make impact outside of this, you know, unprecedented time?
Hmm.
Does that make sense? I mean, that's a big question because it because one, you have to realize, you know, they're not in the best situation as well.
Yeah.
And two, some of them have great hearts that like, man, we want to help the community, you know?
So that's funny you used that you're referring to the book Essentialism, and the irony of that is that right now the companies that are in business that are able to still operate under the current orders are those who are providing essential services.
Mm.
So kind of funny that people
Yeah.
that weren't maybe doing anything essential are now like, hey, how can we adopt an essential model that
Mm.
that keeps us up and running? Um, when you talk to business owners, do you find that a lot of them start off, or at least at some point, are like, I don't want my business to just be like a business, but I want it to do something good for the community or do something good for the world. Do you find that's a
Hmm.
common thread?
I find it's a common starting point,
Yeah.
but then over time, it just kind of like shifts out or something, you know?
Yeah. I don't know, like that book defines essential, and you can probably define essential for yourself. The government in this case has defined essential. You know me, I always like to like define the word we're talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe though, to answer your question, and I'm just thinking out loud with you, is uh, if you're a business right now who isn't providing an essential service, you're probably too focused on just trying to figure out how to survive.
Hmm.
You're not probably in a good headspace to figure out how do I do something good and keep it going after this and create impact.
Yeah.
You're probably just trying to figure out how to survive. Maybe one of the things that we can do is define essential, or maybe what people need to do for themselves is define essential. And if you're in a business that is essential, it is providing essential services, maybe now is a good time to say, hey, look, we're one of the few that can run during times like these. Maybe it's time to start actually thinking about what do we do that's good for the community besides
Mm.
just operating. And if you're a business that doesn't provide something essential, maybe you need to work that into your business model somehow. Not all businesses will be able to,
Yeah.
but maybe you need to work that in because, well, here's where I was going with that. When I said define essential and then work it into your business, the government has defined essential for us today. But if you're a Christian believer, essential for humanity means something different.
Yeah.
If you're really of any belief system, you might have a definition for essential, or you might determine that, hey, we need to be more essential in our business anyway. In other words, there are things that are essential for humanity and things that are essential for people that, whether or not the government defines it as such, they are there. I guess what I'm saying is maybe you need to define essential first and then say, are we doing anything that's essential? Or if everything is shut up, are we even needed? Not
Mm.
just are we needed to provide food or gas or we're a bank. Do people even need us, or are we just a complete luxury buy? If
Mm.
you're just a complete luxury buy, maybe you need to start there.
Mm. I
I
like
know I'm
that.
going on for a minute about this, but what do you,
No, it's fine.
is that helping at all
Go for
to?
it. Yeah, I kind of linked two of the definitions you provided today. And one is I'm almost seeing a correlation between starting with the impact you want to make and not within simply the, you know, money you want to gain.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like starting with the definition of, you know, I know you provide a definition for impact, but what does that definition mean to that particular business owner?
Hmm.
One is what you consider essential surrounded by your definition of impact. Does that make sense? Like, am I
Hmm.
picking what's essential based on the impact I want to make? Or am I picking what's essential based on the money I want to gain? And then, you know, impact comes secondary now. As to before, it was your why, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, in times when you don't have, in times when, times like this, we never seen times like this. So it's hard to even reflect on times like this because we've never seen anything like it. But
Right.
in these unprecedented times when people feel like they have to adjust their priorities because of the unfortunate situations, we lose sight of what impact means, I think.
Yeah.
We lose sight of the what is essential, what you began with. And of course, I think funding is essential. They need to apply. Those are basic things. You need to apply for funding. You need to find out how to survive and stay open. Um, have you been in downtown, dude? It's like it's a
Dead.
ghost town.
It's dead.
It's crazy. And I've never seen so many for lease signs. And I was like, man, like all those one building, let's say one restaurant consists of, let's say, 25 employees,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 20. Those are 20 families. Let's say they were single, let's say they
Yeah.
were young people in college or out of college,
Yeah.
mid 20s, maybe some 30s. They're out of jobs, and the business owner is also there figuring out how do I stay open, and so those are essential things that you need to focus on. But my advocacy during this time is to be like, well, let's redefine impact then. I think that we can still make impact
Mm-hmm.
during this time, even in unfortunate situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if this question, hmm, I don't know if it's pretty, I think simple, but maybe not. Um, how, what other ways can we begin to make impact outside of providing, financial opportunity for people? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the big issue right now is finances, you're saying,
I
for
feel like
most.
it
And
is. I feel
so
like it.
that's the easy target. Everybody's like, help them out with money or something. But
Yeah.
where, yeah,
You know what I mean?
the finance is an easy one, and it's a big one. It's a real one, and it obviously has a cascading effect. You affect somebody's finances, there's like this chain of events.
Yeah.
Um, but vulnerability, the people that are vulnerable, like if you look at vulnerability, finance is just one aspect of vulnerability. I think the reason why
Mm,
I bring up vulnerability is because that's usually where you can have a lot of impact, is where there's vulnerability.
mm,
Um, so identifying the vulnerable, identifying, people with supply chain management backgrounds will do good in this. In fact, if you know somebody with a supply chain background, it might not be a bad idea to link up with them, or at least do a quick little Google search and learn a little bit about it, because it probably will get people's brain going. If you think about like, well, this happens here, so then this happens here, and you kind of understand that supply chain, the chain of events, I think you'll probably see like where the vulnerable sections are.
mm.
Right now, like I was listening to one guy, he's like, we expect domestic violence cases to skyrocket during these times because people are home more, and so
Uh,
there's going to be more of that, um, things like that. Like what A happens, and therefore B is going to happen, and now C, and where's the vulnerability? I think you're right. I think we can have impact during this time. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't challenged trying to think about it.
yeah.
Some of the things we've done in the past, and we've teamed up on a lot of them. And I'm even been thinking about some of those and the people that we were working with, and it's really hard to figure out how do we still do any of that?
You know,
Um,
I went to downtown is a place we used to go to a lot. And when I was there, I was looking around, people experiencing homelessness, and I'd be lying to say that I was a little cautious. I had my mask on, but with this virus spread around, before we would advocate against, we would go straight up and hug people, man. And we would advocate against any like stereotype or anything. We were
yeah,
out there, and one word that we hate, and Tanya can attest to this, is that we hate the word bum and hobo. And
right.
so, I would never use that word again. But when I was out there, I felt like I need to keep my distance, not because, I don't want to hug someone, but because, of this stupid virus, this pandemic going around.
Hmm.
And so, dude, I've been so challenged because this question seems like something that's been rolling in my mind. It's like, how do I continue to make impact? Maybe there's a question: how do I continue to make impact while being at a distance? You know, and I don't know, and it kind of goes against some of the things that I believe too, because some of the things that we talked about was I need to get close first. to make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, man, what do you think about that? It's kind of hard for me. It's kind of hard, kind of a hard bridge right there.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe one way to do this, and this might sound like a cop out to some people, okay,
Yeah.
but it's not if you apply it right. Maybe one of the things that this situation is doing. Well, let me back up. So the other day, this is gonna sound funny. It's a
Go
funny
for it.
example, but
Yeah.
whatever. I bought some white jeans like 4 months ago. Okay,
Nice.
can't wear them 4 months ago because the fashion police tell you can't wear them for. Yeah, I couldn't have worn them 4 months ago. So I
I
got some
went on
white jeans.
Pinterest.
So I get these white jeans, and I'm like, when am I going to wear these white jeans? Now, I don't really care a ton about, like fashion as a whole, but I do have these white jeans that I want to wear.
Yeah.
What I was realizing is I got a bunch of clothes that I'm just not wearing,
Hmm.
right? I got nowhere to go. Like, why? I don't know why. Well, that is probably just a small window into how many other things, if I looked around my life, I would be like, why? Now, the question is, when we get back to normal, am I super concerned about reinvigorating those areas, spending time and money and energy and mental thought on these different areas of my life? And I know this, again, this sounds like a cop out or maybe a little cliche, but the material things, the kind of the luxury things, the
Yeah.
vain things, the vanity plays. How much time am I focused on those? Maybe the real question for me, this is for me, maybe the question for me about impact during this time is going to be less about who else I impact and more about the impact of this time on me.
Hmm.
And so maybe when I look forward 6 months, 2 months, 2 years, 3 years, maybe the question is going to be like, was that just a quarantine time for you, Selah? Or did it impact you enough that your life actually does look different
Hmm.
these 1 years, 2 years, 3 years later? Are you more focused on the essential things? Are you less focused on the vanity plays? Are you actually focused on externals? Or did that time just make you think about it because you couldn't
Hmm.
focus on yourself a whole lot? If you didn't want to, I can't focus on how good I look or where I'm
Yeah.
going, or I can't do that. So maybe
Yeah.
for me, the question will be the impact of this time is going to be, did it actually impact me or was it just a placeholder in time?
I like that. And I think
It
it
sounds like, I
changed.
mean, it could sound like a cop out. It sounds like you're saying, just wait it out, don't do
Yeah.
anything right now. Some people are uniquely suited and they actually have opportunity to affect others. And so if you do, like, go for it. But if you don't, if those opportunities aren't in front of you and you can't think about any, maybe you need to be thinking about, well, like, why aren't opportunities in front of me right now? What's
Hmm.
probably supply chain, it's probably the result of the last 2 years of my life. The
Hmm.
fact that there's no opportunity for me right now to have impact in somebody else's life or do anything meaningful right now is probably because for the last 1 or 2 years, I haven't been doing anything to create that. So now what do I do with this so that ongoing, no matter what the pandemic, no matter what the issue, my life is always suited, I'm always positioned for it? Maybe that's a question that, again, I'm just being a bit transparent here with everybody. Like,
Yeah.
maybe that's what I need to be thinking about.
I think that question kind of challenges me because I don't have, I will admit, I've realized that I'm privileged. I'm very privileged during these times that I have a nice house to be in.
Mm-hmm.
I live in a good neighborhood, and I'll be the first to admit my privilege, not in like a demeaning way, but more in I've realized that I'm blessed during these times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even want to use the word blessed, but I realize that we're well off. And I've with that, I think there's almost this force in me that almost wants to be like, well, because I'm well off, I can do something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another side of me that goes, I hope this isn't just quarantine time. Like, I hope this isn't just, that inner part of me that's bored and checks the fridge 14 times a day to see if it changes and trying to figure out what to do with my extra time. But
Yeah,
I want this to be, a sustaining thing that where I don't look for extra time to make impact, but rather my life is built upon making impact. Does that make sense?
yeah.
And so I've been asking that question, for myself. And I'm pretty sure some people are asking that question, maybe not the word impact, but maybe essential, maybe they're
Yeah,
asking what's essential.
I think you're asking a really important question, and you're bringing up. You're like, am I just thinking about this stuff because I have the time.
Yeah.
And you're probably hitting on something pretty important, because yeah, I think a lot of people probably are in that position too. And they maybe not even are realizing that that's why they're thinking about it. They might be
Yeah.
misjudging, like, oh, well, it's because I'm getting older. I'm a more conscious human being these days, or whatever. But once life gets busy, it's going to be like out the window. So you're actually bringing to the forefront a question that probably we need to be asking ourselves, like, why am I thinking
Mm,
this? Is this just because I got time right now? Well, if it
yeah.
is, then the problem probably when we get back to normal is a time thing for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's what you have now, and it's creating the ability for you to think about it. So then take that away, and if you don't think about it anymore, it's like, oh,
But
I'm
then
too
my
busy.
but then my next question is that, yeah, then what are you surrounding your time with? You know, that's my next question. And what am I surrounding my time with that I have decided is essential?
Right.
You know, what have I labeled essential? And now we're going back to essentialism where, okay, I think this actually back to what you felt this time might be, how I can make impact is what do I need to cut out in my life now that I've had for years, maybe, that I've been doing for years that it's not even essential to my
Mm.
overall goal, which is to create impact. If I started a business to create impact, and now all these forces, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate during this time, and I need to go back to my original definition. Maybe impact isn't financially, you're not financially impacting someone. Maybe it's just what can I cut out in my business now that wasn't even essential when we started.
Yeah.
What was an add-on? What was a widget that we added that not even not even essential anymore. Um, man, well, we're running out of time, but I wanna thank you, man. That kind of challenges my mind, and I hope this isn't quarantine talking, but this. I hope this podcast will allow people to really analyze and really think. One, what did I want to make impact on? What's my definition of impact? Two, what has become essential that shouldn't be essential? And three, what can I do now? What can I do now? And
those are
so,
those are three great themes, man. That's a
yeah,
nice, like, that's a nice circle to
nice little
make there.
circle.
Yeah, yeah, I
Aren't
like
circles the best? I think circles are
it.
little circles. Well, Salah, anything else you want to say for the viewers, man, before we end it?
No, I want to say thanks. Of course, I thank you for letting me be on this, and having the conversation with you, and thank you for the insights you're offering. Because yeah, I think you're asking the important questions that other people need to be asking if they're not already. So yeah, I hope this has impact. That there's fruit of
Yeah,
this for people. So that's cool, man.
me too, man.
Thank you.
All right, man. Well, this is Off the Record podcast with Selah Binno. Cool, man.
Wait, so all that was on the record?
Off the
Off the
record,
record.
man.
Off
Off
the
the
record.
record. Cool, man. We'll see you
Thanks,
guys
man.
soon.